A 2.4 build I keep forgetting to cover is that of the Nova Sorceress, despite the fact that it was a build that I was anticipating being pretty strong, considering they gave it a decent bump with the new synergy of Static Field. So today we'll look at the Energy Shield variant, and as you can see in the background, it did end up performing fairly well, with boosted damage giving us much better chances of causing enemies to be reaction locked by Nova Wave. Now, as with many Lightning Sorceress build types, it doesn't quite do as well against bosses, but is one heck of a beast whenever it comes to clearing farming areas and getting as many drops as possible. But with the goal they gave of returning Nova Sorceress to its former glory, I would say it doesn't quite reach that, but it does reach a comfortably strong point without going nearly as overpowered as it used to be. So it is in a good place, though the 60-point investment in damage is a bit steep since it does cause you to have to cut corners elsewhere. It is worth noting, this build is strong in most places, but on your first several runs with it, I would avoid areas with Succubi and, well, Bail, since the mana curse will wreck your face if you're not prepared, and it will require some juggling even if you are, since Nova is pretty expensive and you will be chunking your life for it. Now, as far as the setup, the stats are a bit more complicated. You, of course, want enough stats for your gear, which thankfully are super low with this build. But this is also a build where you will be balancing energy and life, and due to the extra point requirement to max out Nova, we do need to actually invest in vitality as well, since we are not going to be able to go as hardcore energy shield unless we get very specific and rare gear for it. My goal is usually around 1000 mana for the format I'm going to run the character, so if you have battle orders, you can skimp a bit more on it, but if you're going for long haul runs and don't want to be rebuffing between areas, take that into account. The rest, though, goes into vitality. On the Mercenary, we actually run an Insight. In this case, I'm running a Prayer, Insight, Act 2 Mercenary with Fortitude and Gaze for durability purposes. But with the coming change allowing Insight on bows, I don't think we'd have too much to worry about going with an Act 1 Mercenary with Cold or Fire arrows to keep them a bit safer from, well, being killed by going in melee and being crazy. Since the mana regen is super important here, the extra life gain was just nice to have. In regards to our personal gear, it's pretty similar to our previous Nova build that we showed off, since our entire goal is to floor enemy resistances as hard as possible. This means an Infinity Scythe, which I have an ethereal one just for show, but if you want to use that Cyclone armor, I'd recommend against that. Just realize that Cyclone armor is going to need to be recast a lot if you want to use it. This gives us both conviction for breaking immunities though, as well as a massive boost to lightning resist penetration. I recommend against the Crescent Moon alternative to this, since running Infinity on your Mercenary is going to cost you a lot of mana recovery and force you to invest more in this aspect of the build, so if you're gonna go the Crescent Moon alternative, do not go the Energy Shield variant. The other major source of resist penetration is our helmet with Griffin's Eye, which itself is just an amazing helmet in general. We also packed in a lightning facet in there, but this is also quite important for our faster cast breakpoints, since we are indeed threading the needle with this build, since our current setup we hit directly on the 105% breakpoint for Nova, which is one of the reasons this build is far better for Nova than it is for other lightning builds which require different breakpoints. That said, that's most of the expensive stuff for the build, since the rest generally has budget options you can play around with. For example, while we are running dual Stones of Jordans and a faster cast amulet, with plus skills of course, the power difference if you have to use just a basic +2 amulet and some faster cast rings is minimal, and you can actually end up getting you far more in the way of resistances and other perks if you have the right rares for this. The belt is a similar situation. We do want the faster cast from Arachnid's Mesh to hit our target. We want 105%, but it can be made up for with a caster crafted belt and a single faster cast ring in a pinch if you get a good caster belt roll. And our boots we have on us, they're just for Magic Find. A rare set of gambled resist boots would serve you just as well, if not better for general play, because they'd make you more, well, durable. As far as our armor and gloves, they're actually just dirt cheap to begin with, Mage Fist being common drops in free stuff games, and not terrible to farm or even gamble for at times. And yeah, they are 20% faster cast, and they are important for this. You can also get Trained Ghouls if you want some more resist instead of some more mana. And the skin of the Viper Magi as our armor, it's kind of a similar situation, since it can drop in so many easy to farm early locations, and you can usually get a low percent one for free online, or you can find one by farming a lot of places, even just an early nightmare. That said, even with that, this build is not solo self-found friendly and does require some expensive and hard to find gear. It's just that unlike other builds that cram expensive things into every slot to maximize everything, this one actually has to use the cheap stuff to achieve its goals because it is an off-norm build. In terms of skills, this should be fairly straightforward. The most important parts for any Nova Sorceress in 2.4 are going to be, of course, Nova, Lightning Mastery, and Static Field to maximize your damage. And that level 20 Static Field actually has really good range on it, so do keep that in mind when you're using that. After that, it becomes a decision of your preferred flavor. In this case, we got 20 Telekinesis, 1 point Energy Shield, letting us let plus skills do the rest of the work for it for now, though you could raise it if you wanted, but the 15 points in Warmth, which doesn't seem really important at first, is almost necessary. It did get us to level 26 with gear, which does help, but it gives us more of that mana regen we need to keep our shield up and to keep casting Nova. Now, you don't recharge when you're actually casting. It's one of those things where you want to be refilled back to full by the time you hit the next pack, and that is what Warmth is for. If you want to chug more mana potions, you can skimp there and go more into Energy Shield so it absorbs more and you have less of a need for Vitality. Due to how Nova changed in 2.4 though, making it stronger but taking more points to do so, if it is your main skill, you'll generally be looking at using cheaper support skills like Fire Wall and Frozen Orb with it, rather than the previous iterations where, due to how cheap Nova was, with only a 40-point investment being necessary, you're able to use it with the higher cost option skills like Fireball or Blizzard. You can still get away with these, you just generally will want to be scrimping on the Nova itself, make it basically like a 2.3 Nova, and be pumping into the other skills as if they are your main. Overall though, this is one of my main builds for a reason, being one of the two main Sorceress builds I run off camera. I find it pretty relaxing since you generally don't have to aim at all. There's just nothing that can really stop you in the common farming areas, and even some of the uncommon farming areas are just ripe for the taking. And it is much better at staggering enemies than the 200 faster cast rate varieties I've tried of the Nova Sorceress.